Hi everyone, Nigel Saunders here. It is time to start thinking about the fall bonsai show season. I have two shows in fall, the Toronto Bonsai Society's fall show and sale, and I have the Kitchener-Waterloo Bonsai Society's fall show also. I think both shows are fairly close to each other, so the trees that I prepare for the Toronto show can then go into the KW show also. In this video, I'll start the selection process, picking out the trees and forests that will go in the fall shows. That should give me enough time to get them ready. A possible choice for the fall show is my Giant Sequoia forest. I brought it out today and I'm going to be pruning it up once again. You can see the tips have gotten quite long. So these trees are just over 2 years from seed. They're 2 years and 2 months old from a seed. And I mean, I hope this forest gets better and better over the years, but I think for a forest that's 2 years old from seeds, I think it looks quite nice. And the only reason I want to show this is I hear so many people say that I don't have time to grow trees from seeds. They take, 20 years before they look good. And so I just want to show people that, with the right seed selection and with some pruning, that you can turn seedlings into something that looks quite nice in just a couple of years. Another tree that I think looks really good and is a possible contender for the fall shows is my Australian umbrella tree here. It has a really cool trunk on it, aerial roots. I'm really liking it. So that may look good, and I could, for my accent plant, I could park the Jurassic Park Jeep on a slab of wood or a little bit of terrain or something like that. So that's a possible choice for the fall show, is my Australian umbrella tree. Another contender for the fall show is my Portulacaria afroforest. These trees are designed to look like the giant African baobab tree. And I think I haven't developed the branch structure very well yet, so it's a bit early to put them in the show, but I think they're looking good enough that, it would look interesting at the show with the dry landscape, the styling of the trees. So that's another possible contender for the fall shows. Over here I have my Adenium forest, my Socotra Island planting, which has a whole bunch of succulent tree forms in it. So that's definitely a contender for the fall shows. I think it's starting to look quite nice. And again, the idea of bonsai is they just keep looking better and better every year and into the future. So there comes a time where you think they're good enough for a show. And I think this planting is unique and interesting enough that I could put it in the show, and I think there's people out there that would appreciate it. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people who do not appreciate a planting like this. This spring, I displayed my mini bonsais on this miniature bonsai bench here, and I could display them again just to, show people that you can keep them alive just as easily as any other bonsai if you put them in a tray of sand like this. I do have those steps I got at the thrift store that I could, do a different display, more of a formal display with them. So that's a possibility, but I don't like to show the same trees twice in 1 year. That would be... So they'll probably have to wait until maybe spring again or next year's fall show to be on display again. By then, I think they'll be looking quite good. And again, these will get better every year, hopefully. So it's always hard to determine, well, when do I put a tree in a show? Because, they just keep getting better all the time. Over here I have my Sarissa, and it is in flower. You can see, they call it the tree of 1,000 stars, and you can see all the flowers on the crown here. Looks really nice. It's amazing. So that is definitely a contender for the show. However, I have shown this in Toronto before and the KW show, so I think the next time I show this tree should be when it's undergone some kind of a change. Either it's change in maturity, or I've, pruned the canopy a little differently. So I don't think I'll be just showing this this year, but it is a contender. It would look nice at the show. Over here I have my Chinese village Panjing. I gave these trees quite a severe prune sort of midsummer, and now they're all starting to bud out. So I think they'll be looking really good in about a month or so. So this could be a strong contender for the show. You can see my moss bushes have all kind of blended together, so there'll be some pruning required and some cleanup work. But it's if those trees come out and they're looking good in miniature, I could put this in the fall show. Outside here I have my larch forest, and it's looking quite good. I've been working on this forest quite a bit over the summer, maintaining the miniature appearance of the needles and the branch structure quite well. So it's definitely a possibility for the show. I cut the apex off the main tree, I think last year, and it's healing, and I'm hoping this branch, well, I'm not hoping, it will eventually go more upright. At the moment it's not the most attractive apex on the tree, but I think it's okay. I think I could get this forest cleaned up quite nicely for the fall show. Beside the larch forest I have my cedar forest, my Avatar Grove, and it also got a midsummer prune, so it should fill out quite nicely by the fall season. I think it's looking quite nice, and I haven't shown this in Toronto at all, so it would be a new forest for them to look at, and I'm sure there's someone out there that would like it. I hope anyway. So that's a contender for the fall shows. My northern bog forest here is still looking good. However, I showed that in spring of this year, and I think I had it in the fall show at KW last year, so it's done the show circuit. I'm going to wait until it gets more mature, more developed, before I show it once again. Over here I have all my ficus, my Brazilian rain tree, I think there's my hibiscus here. This summer hasn't been the greatest year for growing ficus. We've had nice warm sunny days, but and a lot of rain, but very, very cool nights. So the growth of these is a little behind where it normally is, but they're all healthy. Like last night we went down to 9 degrees above freezing. It felt really cold. I thought, this feels like the end of summer, but it's not the end of summer yet. There's still a good month of growing to go on these tropicals. And I find they usually, they're kind of slow growing the start of summer, and then towards the end of summer they really start going. Like you can see all these new shoots on them. They're still yellow and underdeveloped. But by the end of summer, these have all filled out. And the trees start growing really strongly. And then our summer ends and the season ends. And yeah, growing tropicals in Canada it's a difficult thing. You don't get a very long growing season. But there's some possibilities here. I already showed my root over temple ficus here. So we'll count that one out. I've already shown the Frankenficus. So that one's out. My Brazilian rain tree needs more development. So does my Natal ficus here. My bougainvillea here is a possibility. It's looking quite nice. That's the back of it. Here's the front. Yeah, it could be a contender for the show, I think. It's quite a nice looking, interesting tree. So that's a possibility. This one, if I gave it a pruning, it would do all right, but I think it just needs to grow. And same with my one that I grew from seed over here. I think it just needs to grow for the rest of the year. You can see it's starting to grow really strongly, but it's, you know, my shoot extension isn't ridiculous yet. So I'm just going to let those grow. My Schefflera forest here, it's doing quite well. It's got a good, healthy looking canopy on it. This was defoliated and pruned in spring, and it's just starting to grow with a lot of vigor. A lot of these new shoots, there's a wasp. A lot of these new shoots are just starting to turn green and dark green now. So it's, the new growth is maturing now. So, yeah. Behind it is my willow leaf ficus. And you can see I pruned it in spring and defoliated it. I think I defoliated it. I think so. And you can see it's looking really good. The leaves came in really, really miniature. So that's a possibility for the show. I would just have to moss it up, do a bit of pruning to clean up the canopy, and that's about it. I think it's looking quite nice. Maybe prune this one long branch off or shorten it. The Austrian pine, it's looking good if you ignore those sacrifice leaders up top that I'm growing. It still needs some smoothing out of the trunk line. That's why I'm growing these sacrifice branches here that'll be pruned off later on in an effort to try and smooth out the trunk. So getting some rapid growth in this tree to smooth it out. So that's still a work in progress. Some of my other trees here, my bird's nest spruce, the cedar forest, I've put in the shows already. But over here is my little cedar spirit tree, the root over rock, and I repotted it this spring into a pot that Sophie made, and it's looking quite nice. It's really filled out up top here now, so that would just take, you know, a bit of pruning, get that growth shortened back a bit, and it could be show ready. It's interesting enough, you know, the roots on the rock here. Yeah, quite a nice tree. So that's a possibility. Another possibility here is my yucca forest. I don't know if I've ever shown this. I may have had it in the KW show long ago, but never at this maturity level. And the canopy's looking fairly good on it. Quite short leaves. This one's starting to take off in vigor and the leaves are getting large. So yeah, if I did show this, I would have to repot it. Some of the trees are tilted a bit as they've grown. They must have gained root mass over this side, and the trees on a bit of a slant. So I would probably, I would have to repot it, I think, if I were to show it. But I don't know. It's a possibility. It doesn't look bad the way it is. It's just, I think it could look better. Yeah, I have shown this. I remember now, because I used to have the little skull here and a desert kind of sand underneath it. My Osage orange forest here, I thought it might be a contender if it leaves out. I gave it a pruning over the midsummer, and I can see the leaves are starting to come out on it now. So if it leaves out nicely, I think it'll look really nice for the show season. And again, this is, you know, grown from seeds. They're young trees, but I think the forest arrangement looks quite nice, that I think people would like it. So that's another possibility, is the Osage orange forest. Beside it, I have my bougainvillea, my fairly old one. I see it's got a flower bud coming on it now. Yeah, it's looking good. That's another possibility for a show. Over here I've got my eastern white cedars that were grown from a seed on top of this rock. And I've been trying to keep them fairly miniature. I really pruned them back this year, trying to get them as compact as possible. And now they're starting to fill in again, and they're looking quite nice. So that's another possibility, is to put this in the show. I'm hoping, you know, someday my European buckthorn here will look really good, and that'll go in a show someday in the future. But I pruned it back this summer for the first time, and I can see the buds are swelling, but I don't know if it'll grow in time for this season or if the buds will just swell and in spring I'll get a good flush of growth out. So we'll see.
That was a look at some of the contenders for the fall show season. So I'll be working on those trees over the upcoming month, getting them show ready. And then when it comes closer to show time, I'll decide, well, what trees I'm actually going to take to the show. What trees are looking really good. I'm going to start working on the contenders for the fall show season with my Giant Sequoia forest. Again, balancing the vigor. So these are apically dominant. So all the strength of the tree goes into the tip here, and it just wants to grow taller and taller and taller. It doesn't really care about these lower side branches. As long as it's growing taller, the tree is happy. So I try and control that top growth, which pushes, you know, the vigor down to the lower branches, trying to maintain that conical form, at least for now while the trees are young. And then as the trees get older and older, I'll be trying for that typical old growth Giant Sequoia look to the forest. My goal for this forest is to keep one of the tallest trees in the world as short as possible, so it's quite a task. So here I go. Let's begin the pruning off the apex and trying to encourage the vigor into the lower branches. All right, let's begin the work. So I'm going to prune. You can see there's a new branch here. I'm going to prune it back short. So you can see I've done that to the ones below, and they're just sat there doing nothing. They haven't, you know, grown from the tips. But on some of the ones down even lower, they have started growing from the tips. So I think, you know, pruning these ones won't get instant results. Actually, this one is starting to grow from the tip now. So it does work. So I'll just, you know, kind of prune through the shoot, shortening it like that. Prune the apex down, shortening that. Just like that. Now, some of these lower branches have actually grown with a lot of vigor, and they're starting to get too long, so I'll have to shorten those also. So I'll just kind of prune away the tips of these to encourage more branching. Okay, I think that's good. Yeah, this branch was quite vigorous. It looked like it was, you know, maybe trying to develop a new leader, which is good. I'd rather, you know, by pruning this top here, all the energy is going down lower and creating good growth in these lower branches, which is what I want. Some of the very lowest ones aren't very vigorous, but we'll keep trying. You can see this branch tip has died off on this tree behind it. Yeah, that whole branch is going to go. Whereas over here, there's a branch growing up and it's very vigorous. It's, yeah, it's like a second trunk almost. So I just have to keep working away at balancing the vigor. So here I go, I'll just keep pruning. So I'm just, you know, basically profile pruning it to a conical form is how I'm approaching the pruning. And we'll just see what lives and what dies. I mean, the trees will live. It's just a matter of trying to keep these lower branches alive. I'm also making sure that the branches don't overlap, so one tree is not growing into another. Yeah, some good growth on this tree. This is the most vigorous tree of the forest. It's the tallest tree, the thickest tree, and it's been that way from seed. It was the dominant tree out of all the seedlings, strongest growing. Which may not be always a good trait in bonsai. You want to balance growth with compactness. So you don't want the trees that just grow super long and leggy. You want a tree that grows well but stays compact. Ideally, it's less work. These super fast, vigorous trees can get coarse and out of shape quite quickly. Like this has been a month since I pruned this and it needs it really badly. These trees are growing quite a bit out of shape. I think I've got to prune that top off here. It's getting too tall. There. It's better. Still too tall though. I'm going to take it right back to there. Want the ones on the outside of the forest to be quite short and then kind of provide that asymmetrical triangular shape to the profile of the forest. Always looks good, that shape. It looks natural. This one tree is still too tall here, and I've already cut it back quite a bit. I can take just a little bit more off it. Like that. On this tree here, you can see this branch. I don't know, I pruned it here. And then I got some new growth starting, and then it's kind of withered out. And instead of that growth, it sprouted all these new branches down below off the trunk. So it's almost like it said, well, I'm giving up on that branch. I'll grow a new one and see how that one does. It's not always the case. Like some of these older branches I pruned up here have all kinds of good new growth on them that's still green and viable. But this one seems to have just kind of petered out. So I don't expect this branch to make it. Even, after today's pruning, I don't think it'll put enough energy into this branch to keep it alive. But we'll see. It's a species that you can just keep working away at, and every time you prune it, I think you'll learn something about the species, that how it reacts to the pruning. See, like up here, you can see I've pruned this branch previously. There's no new growth off that branch, but all around it, it sprouted all kinds of new branches. So again, it's like saying, that branch didn't work out. I'm going to try a new one. Interesting. And I'm not sure if there's a date, where you should stop the pruning, midway through summer, don't prune them again, or if you just keep pruning them right till winter comes. So these are a little more cold hardy than the coastal redwoods. These trees do grow in the mountains where they get snow and cold weather. So, however, they still do need protection in the winter, especially here in Canada, where we get down to some pretty cold temperatures. So a cold frame, an unheated garage are good options to keep the tree alive in the winter. I try and keep it just above freezing, but it has dropped down below freezing a couple of times in the winter, and it seems to do all right. And you should protect them from the wind. Sometimes it's not the cold that gets the tree, it's the wind. A dry winter wind can dry out the foliage. The roots are frozen, so it can't get any more sap flowing up to them, and the tree just perishes. It just sort of freeze dries. So you got to be careful to keep them out of the winter wind. Yeah, so I pruned this tree heavily in the apex, and instead of growing from those branches I pruned, it shot up a new branch. But there are buds all around the branches I pruned, so I think that will come at a later date. It set itself up to continue growing those branches. It just takes some patience and time. And this is my tallest tree in the forest, so I'm trying to kind of keep these shorter, getting that asymmetrical triangular profile. Let me start on this outer one. I can shorten this as much as I can. Back to here. And this one back to here. Really shortening that. Now, by doing the tallest tree and the smallest tree, you can kind of then draw your line between the two to get the height of a lot of the other trees. It doesn't have to be exact, but it gives you a guideline of where you're pruning the overall forest. And again, trees in the front of the forest should be taller, and then as you go to the back, they should get shorter, so it makes the trees at the back of the forest look like they're in the distance. I'm going to take, this is one that I need to reduce the height here, so I'm going to take this whole apex off here, which is quite a big step forward. Just checking that out. Okay, here I go. It's still a little high. I may have to bring that down further. This one's got to come back. If I brought it down further, I'd have to go right down to here, which is possible. There's a good shoot there, so I think I will. Why not? Yeah, that's better. You can see that profile of the forest developing now. I'll just pinch these tips here. Just to get some branching happening. Like that. This is a twin trunk tree. Yeah, I still have to work on the trees in the back. They're kind of, well, this one's growing really tall. It doesn't really follow my rule about, you know, the front ones being the tallest trees and then tapering it back. So I'll have to work on that. I have that with my Osage orange forest, and it looks really, really good. So this one I can reduce back further. Take a heavy cut here, like that. Shorten some of these branches. I could reduce this one back. I haven't pruned this one yet, but let me just start pruning it and we'll see what height it comes out to. It's still a little high. There's no, this is the only branch that kind of comes out front to be a good leader, or maybe this one, but
Nothing down lower much. I think I'm going to do a hard prune on this one, taking the whole top off. I just think it's getting too tall. And I think the forest, I talked about that straight line. I think this is where I need some relief there. And then sort of secondary triangle here. I think it'll make it more interesting. So here I go. Kind of a blind cut, just taking the top off this tree to a suitable height, like right here. Done. That looks better. Some more pinching here. I've got a really long branch in here that needs pruning back. That. Some long ones back here. A weed to pull out there. Important to keep your weeds under control too, not just your trees. Okay, and some shortening of the shoots up in the apex here. Again, maintaining that conical form. And as I said earlier, that conical form will eventually develop into like an old growth sequoia look. But, that'll be many, many years down the road. So for now, I'm styling them as younger trees, and then, they'll make that transition. So here's a really strong branch here. It's like it shot out from the side of the tree. So I'm going to prune it right back, taking the whole end off that branch. It was growing into the tree beside it. There's a shoot up here we can prune. So I think have I? No, maybe I haven't completed the rough pruning. There's this tree here, which is really vigorous at the tip. Let me just see where it lies in the forest. Oh, that's pretty good height. It could be reduced just a little bit, so I will. Well, I think overall it's looking okay. I think that's it for the pruning of the sequoias. Here's a look at what I took off today. So a fair amount, considering the forest looked quite nice even before the pruning. So let's have a look at the forest now. Today's update is the pear tree beside the greenhouse here. And it's just loaded with fruits this year, and they're starting to ripen. I had a pear yesterday and it was just delicious. Usually the squirrels eat them all, but this year there's been very few squirrels around. And I'm thinking maybe COVID wiped them out. I don't know, but I've only seen one squirrel in our backyard for like the whole year. And usually there's like tons of them. They're usually running along this fence all day long. Now I rarely see one. So we didn't have a harsh winter, so that couldn't have killed them off. So I was wondering, maybe COVID killed them off. I don't know, but there's just no squirrels around. And I think I'd rather pears anyway. See, so it's just loaded with pears. So I'll be glad when we harvest all these. My wife's going to, I guess, blanch them for the winter. And I can prune this tree back finally so I get my walkway back here. Right now I have to duck under these weeping branches all the time. Yeah, so, and then I'll have to prune the tree back. Pear trees tend to grow vertical. So if you don't top the, the height of them, the pears just grow way up there where you can't reach them. Like I could never reach the ones at the top there. And I'm hoping they don't fall on the glass of my greenhouse here. I may have to do something there. Yeah, so lots of pears this year, and they're very, very good. Matching the tree with the pot, and then the pot and tree with the stand is always difficult. This stand is way too heavy for this planting. It's just a placeholder until I find a better stand. So it's kind of exciting thinking about the upcoming fall bonsai shows, but it also means that the end of summer will be coming. However, I enjoy winter just as much. I work out here in the greenhouse all year long, so it feels like I've never been stuck inside. I like the feeling of coming out here and working in any weather in here in the greenhouse, and I always find something to do. I never seem to run out of material to work on, which is a good thing. So that's all for today. Exciting to start thinking about the shows. I'm Nigel Saunders. Thanks for joining me in the Bonsai Zone.